Political tensions are rising across the Middle East. Let's discuss the potential risks with Ian Bremmer, founder and president of Eurasia Group, a political research and consulting firm, and G0 Media. Ian, good morning. As we heard from Imtiaz and all of our reporters on the ground, the situation is just getting more and more tense. We are on the brink of a ground invasion from Israel, which could happen at any moment now. Can you put this in historical context for us?
Well, two pieces of history that really matter here. One is this is the biggest military conflict that we will have seen in 50 years, 1973. And the difference is, at that point, Israel was facing an existential threat. Could it potentially continue to survive as a state? That is not the case here. Instead, the relevant history for the Israelis is this is the biggest attack against Jews worldwide since the Holocaust. And, you know, in addition to 1,400 Israelis, mostly civilians, killed, you also have a call-up of 360,000 reservists to fight in the war. That's 4% of the entire Israeli population. So the historic background is affecting the average Israeli in a way that is inconceivable for people that are outside of it.
And then the key for the Jewish psyche as well is that the murders in Israel bring back the darkest days of the Holocaust, the pogroms, the ghettos, murders in their homes. And as a result, there is this emotional pain on the Israeli side. They're going to go into Gaza. They have a military objective, war on Hamas, not the Palestinian people. However, those things can get mixed up in the heat of conflict, and public goodwill, world goodwill could turn. And that involves the U.S., right? Because we're supporting Israel so staunchly. How do we strike a balance here between all these different parties? Or do we not?
The United States has never been an honest broker in the Israel-Palestinian conflict. There's been an effort to try to create a two-state solution. There's been an effort of diplomacy. But the Americans have supported Israel. They're the staunchest ally of the United States in the region. That's not going to change. Keep in mind that the depredation that is being felt by the Palestinians, the civilians, not Hamas, on the ground in Gaza is not new. We're talking about 90% of the 2.3 million people there that don't have access to clean water, 50% hunger. That's before the Israeli bombing started. So these are not livable conditions. These are not humane conditions. And Hamas has been a part of the problem. They didn't suddenly discover terrorism 10 days ago. They've been attempting terrorist attacks against Israelis for a long time. They've said that Israel doesn't have a right to exist. The difference is that Netanyahu's government took the eye off the ball, that the world-class border security suddenly didn't exist, that the world-class intelligence didn't exist. But Hamas will do everything it can to preserve itself in their ability to fight against the Israelis as the ground occupation begins. And that means they're going to use Palestinian civilians as human shields. There are 199 Israelis being held as hostages right now in Gaza. There are millions of Palestinians being held as hostages by Hamas. And there's no ability for the Israelis to take out Hamas without immense civilian damage.
And you say the truth of this conflict is Israelis and Palestinians must learn how to live together peacefully. Now, given the history, the conflict, yes, times of peace in between bloodshed, how does that even happen? What does that look like?
Well, this is not a time of peace. So right now, the effort that's being made by Tony Blinken, who is, in every country in the region every day, is simply to stop the war from expanding into the West Bank with greater radicalization of the Palestinians, expanding into Hezbollah, Lebanon, and maybe long-term even Iran. That would affect American citizens if that were to occur. But long-term, the reality is no different than it was in 1973. Ever since the Israelis got the mandate to, this is your homeland, you get to live here, they've been surrounded by people that don't want them to live there, and the Palestinians have every bit as rightful a claim to that land as Jews in Israel do. That doesn't go away after the Gaza war. That continues. So as angry as everyone is, legitimately angry, as hurtful as the tragedies we've experienced in the last 10 days, at the end of this Gaza occupation, Palestinians and Jews in this territory will have to continue to live together. And we're going to have to find a way to facilitate that. The big thing that's happened in the last 10 years is that a whole bunch of people in the region thought we could ignore the Palestinians, right? I mean, you had peace between the UAE and Israel And the Palestinian situation only got worse. You had Israel focusing on expanding the settlements in the West Bank. The Palestinian situation only got worse. Well, it turns out you can't ignore the Palestinians.
Right.
And that is not going to go away.
And Ian, very quickly, what's the holdup at the Rafa crossing, the border crossing into Egypt, where, we're 9 days into this, that's still closed? Why is Egypt taking so long to open that up?
As of today, it is the Egyptians are saying that they have no deal that the Israelis will stop bombing the south, a ceasefire temporarily that would allow humanitarian goods to come through and then would allow international citizens in Gaza to get out. I suspect that will be resolved within a matter of hours. That is the single top near-term priority of diplomacy in the region.
Ian Bremmer, thank you so much. Let's hope so.